How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lo4f, and today I'm going to go and do the contract called Keep Refrigerated. I've not got many contracts left, but this one in particular unlocks at least one of the missions, or contracts, sorry, on like the last group of contracts, so, and then I've got another 3 to do on there. I'm skipping the stuff like hot potatoes and I think the bulk loading one. So for this one, I'm setting off from the Heartlands map, going to go down to the scrapyard, get 2 vehicle spare parts, and then head up to the Harvest Court map, and then cut across that map to this warehouse to drop them off. And then the other cargo I need to drop off is 2 metal beams, which is like right next to it. You can actually get vehicle spare parts from a warehouse I've unlocked at the airport, but the reason I didn't bother getting them from there, because I'd only set off from like that garage to the airport and then to the warehouse, and yeah, the video would only be like 5 minutes long. I barely sort of get started by the time it's already done, so I already knew there is like a shorter way to do this mission, but just for the sakes of like, yeah, messing around a bit in a truck, actually get it going for a proper run. I've also done a couple of missions pretty recently where I kind of go from that garage to the airport, but they had a few other things involved, so yeah, just to save it being like a repeat of a bit of a video the other day, really. And yeah, for this one, I decided to go and take the Tatra Phoenix, because as I've decided to go to the junkyard on Heartlands, I keep getting Heartlands and Harvest Court mixed up. Yeah, just I wanted something like with a high gear and all the rest of it, and I was flicking through a few different vehicles. I was and ahhing. I could have gone for the twin steer as well. But yeah, I don't know, just as I was flicking through it, I thought I've not taken the Tatra Phoenix out for a little while. And the goddamn horse, he's coming with me, of course, he's colour-coded. I was just balancing him on top of the roof there. I knew it wouldn't last very long. I could have just put him in the sideboard, but for the hell of it, I just figured I'll balance him on the roof, see what happens. And yeah, we made it this far. He's going to get back to his wheels. He's just playing, like leaning on the side. And yeah, like I say, as I was going through my missions, or contracts, whatever, I've not really got that many left now at all. Yeah, the like hot potatoes is doing the farming, I'm not too keen on doing that one. The bulk loading I'm definitely going to skip, because that's basically more farming than a lot of it. I think I've also got one other mission, I think it's called like Fight Fire with Fire, where I've got to go and take a load of secure containers all over, I think it's the Institute map. I'm pretty sure it was, because I think some of them where you had to drop them off kind of lines up with when I did that deep study contract yesterday. It sort of lined up with some of them where I had to scan the various areas, so yeah, not many to go. Still not too sure when Phase 9 is out. I don't really mind either. It's again, I said it before, really, it was sort of handy that it seems to have been delayed by a week or two, because yeah, I had a bit of a rough last couple of weeks, so yeah, that's probably for the best. And this Tatra Phoenix, one thing I can say while driving it, I can't remember if it was this bad before or not, but the steering on it's pretty painfully slow, which is odd because it's got a rear steer and the front 2 axles of it also steer, so 3 out of the 4 axles steer, and yet, well, it seems to somehow simultaneously be slow at steering and then almost too fast. It's like it's really slow to kick in the steering. Even when you watch the wheels, they take forever to turn, but then once it does, by the time you've got all 3 axles turning, if you drop in the hammer, particularly like up in high gear, it will then start doing a bit of a drift, which in general I quite like drifting the vehicles, but as you're trying to weave round certain corners and between trees and all the rest of it, it can get a little bit lively. You can see how bad this road is along here as well. It's like super mud slash death mud, so yeah, stick to the grass on that one. And I've already got a couple of different vehicles there. I think they're both Bruce's actually, and a pair of Professionals. I was and ahhing over stealing the 2-slot trailer off one of the Bruce's. I've also got a ramped flatbed here as well. As you can see, I'm not driving. I was looking at the trailers at the time, so I smashed into some scrap that's on the side of the road. Managed to pop a tyre. And then yeah, 2 vehicle spare parts, which, like I say again, you can get them from the airport at Harvest Court, but it's just, I don't really mind it, to be fair, but once you get to the warehouse, as I say, the 2 metal beams are like right next to where you got to drop them off. It's practically a non-mission. again, it kind of gives a hint that they kind of cobbled together probably some of the missions, ran out of time a bit and just threw a few things together on the Harvest Court map, which is not the end of the world. At least there's some missions to do, but obviously time wise it practically, I don't know, adds like an extra 30 seconds to the mission, if that. Yeah, with a loaf, just fix me tyre. At this point I think both Bruces have got a crane on, even though it is the horrifically terrible blue crane. Funnily enough as well, I was lifting the loaf when I put it on the roof of the Phoenix with a big crane in the yard, and even the big crane couldn't lift the loaf off the floor today, so again, it's kind of another hint that they're tweaking, doing like updates and stuff in the background, I assume in preparation for Phase 9, and yeah, they seem to have completely broke those cranes at the minute. See, just getting through that gap there, even turning, it took like 2 or 3 attempts just to make it through because of how slow the steering is on this truck. And at this point, instead of following the roads, for 2 main reasons really. One, kind of super mud and everything going on. Yeah, I just kind of, even though I didn't want to make the video like a tiny video by just going to the airport and doing it that way, I also didn't want to make it like a really long video by, yeah, following each and every road going along. So yeah, it was a good excuse to go flying across the countryside. It worked out pretty nicely. The old loaf's flying around a bit though. And yeah, you can see at a certain point it's still being a little bit of a troll with the damage going on. I'm definitely pretty convinced they've turned it up recently. At this point it's like half convinced that they've got some kind of double agent employee from, I don't know, some competitor like Euro Truck Simulator. And the mission objective is like, yeah, just keep slowly encouraging them to nerf every aspect of the game. Thankfully it didn't tip there or anything though. See the loaf, he was bluffing. Looked like he was going to tip, but he was back to his wheels in no time. Yeah, I went down this road the other week in a vehicle, and I think I rolled it there. So the Tatra Phoenix isn't tippy or anything like that. It's a pretty decent vehicle all around. It's got some nice speed to it. The high range I've always liked because, well, in fact, there's a perfect example. I did drop it into auto in the end, but I could have stayed in high, and I don't think it would have stalled. I think at that point as well, I didn't even have the loaf engine on, so I was kind of pulling it all by myself. That's what she said. And yeah, a bit more cutting across the countryside and run a few Jeepers Creepers scarecrows over. There's a contest there. I'm not sure if I've done it on this version of my playthrough actually. I'm pretty sure I did it on the live stream. I think that might be the contest actually, where you have to basically go and run a load of those scarecrows over. And then yeah, you can see, I mean, there's hence a pretty good choice cutting across the countryside, because as soon as you get back to these roads, it's not a particular fan. And normally I kind of would put the chain tyres on. I went for, I think it was one of the new sets of muds that we get, which they feel about the same as like the old muds. It's basically just seems like more variety of tyre patterns and treads and that these days, but yeah, I don't know. If I was going to do this mission again, I'd probably quite happily just use the chained option again, especially like this Russian truck, so I'll have the chained version of the muds. I'm not entirely sure. I think I might either be stuck on a rock or they've snuck a dead tree in there somewhere. One nice thing with this Tatra as well is like the stock bumper goes quite low down and sits quite low to the floor, but you can actually swap it for, it's almost like a bumper delete really. It'd be a pretty good option if they give us the chance to do that with Bruce, because it's pretty cool that they've added like raised suspension and that on it, but yeah, the options kind of remove that. Big Bruce chin would be pretty nice to see how it handles. And I already know this is, of the 2 river crossings on the Heartlands map, this is the one like I practically never use. I've done it once or twice in various videos just for the sakes of getting the footage, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't recommend crossing it. If anything, I probably would have been quicker possibly, just to carry on like along the river, cutting across the countryside again, and use the normal crossing, because yeah, it's just like super mud, if not death mud, all around here. It's a little bit on the brutal side. So you got a little boost from the loaf there. I mean, to be fair, it's probably not quite death mud because I am actually still moving. But yeah, there's absolutely no speed or torque or grip or anything. It just kind of forces you to go 1 mile an hour. The old loaf, getting water samples, he knows what he's doing. As we suspected, it is the wet kind of water. And then now, I don't know, yeah, is it here or just a little bit further ahead? There's a little root sticking out of the ground. It's a bit of a nightmare going this route. It's not too bad at the minute, and again, the Tatra Phoenix isn't very tippy or anything, but if you come through in like a truck where you're towing a trailer and that, yeah, this place might catch you out. See, in the last month or so, I'm sure they've done something where the roots just actually stick out the ground further than they used to. You can actually like see them there, yeah, bordering on like dead trees in their own right, and they're easily as much of a pain in the arse for catching your wheels. It's slower along here. You want to try and run along the grass edge if you can instead of the road, but coming up to probably about where my waypoint is now, yeah, that wooden bridge that cuts across, it's kind of worth using it because I did try jumping this ditch last time. It's just at the perfect angle really where your nose kind of slams down into the ground, and it's a bit of a pain in the arse getting out there. And I think when I did it last time I was towing a ramped flatbed behind me, so I had to reverse that all of about 5 inches, which I think was enough to nearly tip the bloody thing over. Even the loaf took like a big fat bit of damage there, and for the most part when I'm towing the loaf behind me, it doesn't really take that sort of damage anyway. I think that like burst a wheel and all sorts. He never gets that kind of stuff. It's mostly the engine, which, because I put the top engine in, it's like a pretty weak engine to be fair. And then yeah, that bit to the right of me, that is, I would say, is death mud. The last time I went in there I got pretty stuck, had to kind of slowly winch my way out, so I cut along the bank. You've got to be a little bit careful because one, they've stashed a few tree stumps in among the grass there, and also it kind of sits on a bit of a slope, so if you start drifting too much to the right you'll kind of slip back into that swampy bit and roll over, which rather avoided if you can. Yeah, you can see my loaf took a good old hit on the way, but he's got that horse. He's got his repairs with him, so fixed himself up. Still stashed a few for later. So yeah, I'm on the Harvest Court map now, and pretty simple. Follow the road along, cut across like the river section, but I've built some sort of little log bridge things going on. And then yeah, when you get here, drop it off there, and that's, I was just messing around like drawing a few loops with the waypoint markers, because that's all I got to do really. Do a couple of laps of the yard. I thought I nearly didn't winch the loaf there, because I'm sure the other week or whatever you were able to like winch to a vehicle, and then when you turned your engine off it still kept the winch attached. So I just kind of figured it'd still be attached, and then I went to drive off and it wasn't. So I don't know if they've now re-changed that back to how it originally was, where as soon as you turn the engine off it just automatically disconnects it. I'm not too sure. I had the TV volume pretty quiet, so I didn't hear if it did the winch noise or not. Good old dolphin. Yeah, you can see again with the steering, just to like, it's taken ages to kick in. I didn't want to hit that tree on the left, and then by the time it did kick in, kind of swerved over to the right, then let off the steering to make it centre again, then didn't, or wasn't able to steer quick enough before I smashed into them logs. It can, yeah, catch you out a bit. I don't know if I've just been driving other trucks recently that have got pretty good steering, but I don't know, this does feel pretty slow, even when you watch it. Is he a loaf? That's not OG loaf. as a decoy, just in case the government try to seize him. He'll spot them. He'll seize them first. These dirt roads, to be fair, these are actually pretty reasonable. There's a little patch of swampy section here, but apologies, keep getting a few little tiny glitches. They're only like half-second glitches, but still they're a bit of a pain in the arse. There's not really any way I can stop them. Lo4f is trying to jump back into the sideboard then. And again, this the Tatra is actually pretty planted, so when I was at the scrapyard getting the vehicle spare parts, like I say, I had the blue crane on both the Bruces, so I could have lifted the Lo4f up and kind of balanced him on the cargo if I wanted. And I was just thinking then, out of quite a few vehicles, this one probably would have had a fairly decent chance of like not flopping over. But yeah, a bit more driving across the countryside. I could have followed the road round, but just for the sakes of it, yeah, I quite like making my own route up, really. Feels a little bit more, pay a bit more attention. Like I say, with the roads, the main way they kill it for themselves is they just, when, especially these days that it forces you to stay in first gear, there's just no speed going on, and because there's no speed, there's no real risk happening. You're essentially just back to squeezing the throttle and kind of looking around, whistling a tune while you're waiting to crawl your way ahead. Whereas at least, and that's one thing I do like about this phase, was one, that you can actually move along at a reasonable pace when you're cutting across the countryside, but like those little ditches and that I just jumped over, yeah, there is actually like a little bit that's sort of you got to pay attention to, otherwise you can easily have an awkward bounce and roll it. There's Lo4f doing an impression, and he gets back to his wheels. That was my fault. I blipped the throttle and completely lost all my power when I got back on that road. So I don't think this Mike will pick it up, but there's a bird outside that was going absolutely nuts. Sounds like he's just found the world's biggest worm. I have to check my flies on undone. So it's actually, looking outside, it's definitely getting lighter a bit sooner now. It's only 7:15 and it's actually not completely pitch black out there. It was only felt like a couple of weeks ago. It was still dark at like 8, half 8, unless it was like a sunny morning. Again, I can't wait for a bit of spring or summer, but I'm bored of the cold now. too much heating going on. Yeah, drop both them off, and then, as you can see, a gigantic journey. It's so close, the turning circle of this Tatra, which somehow, again, considering 3 of the 4 wheels steer, I don't know how it manages to have such a large turning circle. I tried it there though. If you stick it in high and drop the hammer, you can kind of get a bit of a drift going on. Bump back into my Lo4f. Yeah, because I didn't nick one of the trailers from the Bruces at the scrapyard, just got to do 2 quick laps. To be fair, I already had the idea to do it, but it wasn't really worth hauling a trailer all the way over 2 maps just for the sakes of cutting out like an extra little lap round there. I tried to do the drift at the last minute, smashed into some kind of air conditioning unit on the edge of the building or something. Drop that off, and then you can see it's funny with the money. It's over 11,000. I can't quite see because it shrinks the screen, but yeah, the amounts they pay out on this phase, particularly this map Harvest Corp, are just all over the show. I think the mission I did yesterday, Deep Study, was only a couple of grand. That wasn't too bad. There's been other missions that are pretty bloody awkward, and they've only paid 3 or 4 grand. This mission, again, I could have just gone to the airport and got the vehicle spare parts, and this mission would have been done in a matter of minutes. And yeah, 11.5 odd grand. There with it, this is a little bit scruffy with the editing. I was basically done with the video. I was just messing around. I decided I wanted to get the Lo4f back in the sideboard, and as this is like a, you know, its own unique sideboard, it could be a little bit more awkward. So I reversed the Lo4f onto the boxes, got his back end up, but then he tripped over one of the boxes, hoist by his own petard. But then yeah, I was just a little technique to flick the Lo4f in there that I've not done in a while. When the Lo4f's laying on his side, do a winch from like the front of the truck to the middle top winch point of the Lo4f when he's laying on his side, and then drive forward while you're hoovering the winch in, and it just kind of flicks him up into the sideboard. A little bit more jiggling to wiggle it around a bit to get it in there. That's what she said, of course. But yeah, of course he made it. He's a goddamn professional. He's Lo4f trained. But yeah, anyway, that's about it for today. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon members. Get yourself a Lo4f because he's a goddamn beast. And I'll be back soon.